There comes a time in your life when you realize no one is coming to save you. Not your friends, not your family, not the person you thought would love you forever. And that realization hurts deep. It's like standing in the middle of a silent battlefield, surrounded by the wreckage of your expectations, wondering, was I ever enough? You gave pieces of yourself to people who couldn't even handle your presence. You lowered your standards to fit into lives that weren't meant to carry your weight. And now you're tired of pretending, tired of waiting, tired of hurting. But this moment, right now, this silence you feel, it's not the end. It's the beginning of choosing you, of stepping away from what broke you and walking toward what builds you. Because the world doesn't need another broken man begging for love, or another woman shrinking herself to feel wanted. The world needs people who rise, those who transform their pain into power, those who focus so deeply on themselves, become unrecognizable to the version of themselves that used to settle. So stop explaining yourself. Stop chasing people who don't see you. Stop waiting for life to permit you. Focus on yourself. Discipline your mind. Sharpen your spirit. And one day, without warning, you will shock them all. Not through revenge, not through words, but by becoming exactly who they never believed they could be. There is a kind of silence that cuts deeper than any insult. It is the silence of being ignored, of giving your energy to someone and receiving nothing in return, of being present but never truly seen. You begin to wonder, am I invisible? Do I matter? And the longer this question echoes unanswered, the more it eats at you from the inside. At first you try harder. You become louder, kinder, more accommodating. You stretch yourself so thin just to be noticed, just to feel like you belong somewhere, anywhere. However, the truth is that the more you chase after people who overlook you, the more disconnected you become from yourself. And that is the real tragedy, not that they ignored you, but you began to forgive yourself. You see, this is where most people get stuck. They take the pain of being dismissed and internalize it as evidence that they are not worthy. They assume something must be wrong with them. But I tell you this, not everyone will recognize your value. Not everyone will understand your depth. That does not mean you are broken. It means they are not meant to walk your path. But what if the pain of being ignored is not punishment, but invitation? What if it's the first spark of your awakening? Because here's the deeper truth that most people miss. Being ignored forces you to look inward. It strips away the noise, the distractions, the external validation. And it leaves you with one person, yourself, and that can be terrifying. Because when you sit alone with yourself, with no one to please, no one to chase, no one to impress, you come face to face with who you are. Not the version others want, not the image you portray, just you. It is here, inside this space of emptiness, that transformation begins. This is not weakness. It is preparation. The caterpillar is not praised while it's in the cocoon. The seed is not admired while buried beneath the dirt. But both are evolving silently, unseen, unnoticed. So you, too, must embrace this phase of obscurity. This phase is where no one claps for you, where no one texts back, where no one checks in. This is where warriors are forged. But to rise from this, you must stop asking, why don't they see me? And start asking, why do I need them to? Because this is the truth. If your worth depends on someone else's attention, then your power is not your own. But the moment you take it back, when you say, enough, I will no longer beg to be seen, I will see myself. That is the moment your life begins to change. You do not need validation to be valuable. You do not need applause to become great. You only need one thing: focus. Focus not on them, not on what they did or didn't say. Focus on you, on your breath, on your thoughts, on your path, because when you return to yourself, something incredible happens. The pain no longer defines you. It refines you. You become sharper, calmer, more aware. You realize that every time you were ignored, it was life removing the noise so you could hear the one voice that matters, your own. And in that voice you begin to build, not out of bitterness but out of clarity. Not to prove them wrong, but to prove yourself right. Do not try to force your presence where it's not appreciated. Instead, become so rooted in yourself that being overlooked no longer shakes you. Let them ignore you, let them doubt, let them forget you. But while they sleep on you, you wake up to yourself. While they scroll mindlessly, you train intentionally. While they talk about others, you build the discipline to transform. And one day, without warning, you will walk into a room and they won't be able to ignore you, not because you begged to be seen, but because your presence has become undeniable. So, to those who feel invisible, remember this: you are not here to be noticed. You are here to become something so deeply grounded, so unwavering in purpose, that the world has no choice but to notice the light you built in the dark. The pain of being ignored, that was never rejection. That was your invitation to awaken, to rise, to finally meet the version of you that doesn't chase attention because he commands it. And that is how you begin to shock everyone, by finally choosing yourself. We live in a time where distraction is the default. Every second there is a screen calling for your attention, a message, a notification, another video, another opinion, another illusion to escape into. And somewhere in the middle of all this noise, you are losing yourself. You think you're just relaxing. You tell yourself it's just 5 minutes, but 5 minutes turns into hours, days. And before you realize it, you're living in a loop, constantly busy, constantly entertained, yet deeply unfulfilled. Why? Because the truth is, distraction is not just a thief of time. It is the enemy of mastery. Distraction pulls you away from who you could become. It dulls your edge, it numbs your awareness, and slowly it convinces you that settling for average is acceptable. You see, real power, real transformation doesn't come when your mind is scattered. It comes when your mind is still. But silence scares people. Stillness confronts them, because when everything goes quiet, when the phone is turned off and the room is empty, you're left with only one thing: your truth. And many people don't want to face that, because the truth might say, you are not living in alignment. You are wasting your potential. You are pretending to be okay, but you are not. But if you are brave enough to stay in that silence, if you are willing to remove the distractions, you will find something far more valuable than any dopamine hit. You will find yourself. Mastery begins where distraction ends. Every time you resist the urge to escape, every time you sit with discomfort instead of running from it, you are building inner strength. Think about it. The warrior does not train with noise around him. He trains in silence, focused, intentional. Present, the monk does not cultivate wisdom by watching others. He cultivates by observing himself, breath by breath, thought by thought. You cannot master your mind while constantly feeding it garbage. You cannot become focused if you never practice focus. Most people are not tired, they are overstimulated. not overwhelmed with responsibilities, but flooded with distractions. And the irony is, they are desperate for peace while clinging to the very habits that destroy it. If you want to shock the world, if you want to rise and become unshakable, then you must learn the art of deliberate isolation. Not isolation from people, but what pulls you away from your growth. When was the last time you sat with a single thought and followed it deeply? When was the last time you worked on a skill for hours uninterrupted, purely for the sake of mastering it? That level of devotion is rare, but it is the path to power. You want clarity, then remove the noise. You want discipline, then train it moment by moment, starting with where your attention goes. Attention is the life force. Where it flows, your energy grows, and the reason you feel empty after hours of distraction is that your energy is being scattered, not rooted. Let me tell you something true. The most dangerous version of you is the one who is focused, not angry. Not loud, not impulsive, but still, sharp, grounded, because when you are focused, you are fully present. And presence, pure presence, is the gateway to transformation. That's where mastery lives, not in some distant goal, but in this moment, fully met with awareness and discipline. So, ask yourself, what are you giving your attention to every day? Who are you becoming through those choices? Because every notification you check, every hour lost to meaningless scrolling, that is energy you could have invested in building something, learning something, becoming someone. Your time is not limitless. Your energy is not infinite, so protect it. Wake up early, not because it's trendy, but because in the early hours the world is quiet, and in that quiet you can hear your purpose. Train your body not just for strength, but to discipline your spirit, to remind yourself what effort feels like. Sit in silence, not because it's comfortable, but because growth lives just beyond discomfort. The world is full of distracted people. That is why most stay average, but you don't need to be one of them. Let them scroll, let them seek validation. Let them talk, compare, and waste time. You focus. You withdraw your energy from what doesn't serve your higher path. And you direct it, like a blade onto your craft, your health, your evolution. And while they are watching, you are becoming. That is how you shock everyone, not by shouting, not by showing off, but by sharpening yourself so fully in silence that is when you finally emerge. They are left in awe of what you built while they were distracted. There is a silent war happening inside many people. They are building new lives on top of broken foundations, smiling in public but bleeding in private. They chase success, love, and validation, while quietly carrying the weight of old wounds that were never truly acknowledged. You see, we live in a culture that praises productivity but avoids healing. We glorify the hustle but neglect the pain. We say, keep going, even when everything inside us is screaming for us to stop and breathe. But let me ask you a question. If the foundation of a building is cracked, how high can you build before it collapses? This is the truth most people don't want to face. You cannot build something strong while you are still emotionally fragmented. You cannot truly rise if part of you is still stuck in the past. And no, ignoring the pain will not make it disappear. Suppressing the memory will not erase its impact. You must go through it. Healing is not a sign of weakness. It is the deepest kind of strength because it takes courage to look at your pain, to sit with it, feel it, and ask, what is this trying to teach me? Too many people are trying to achieve greatness from a place of emotional chaos. They think success will silence the wounds. They think if they get fit enough, rich enough, loved enough, the pain will vanish. But success built on pain will always be fragile. Eventually it cracks, So instead of asking, how can I win? Ask yourself, where am I still bleeding? Because of that pain you avoid? It leaks into everything, your relationships, your discipline, your decisions. You begin reacting from the wound, not from wisdom. Think about how many times you've sabotaged something good, not because it wasn't meant for you, but because a past wound whispered, you don't deserve this. This is why healing comes first. And healing doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean pretending it didn't happen. It means taking full ownership of your experience, no more blame, no more denial. It means looking back at the people who hurt you and saying, yes, it broke me, but it will not define me. It means no longer carrying resentment like armor. Because armor may protect you, but it also isolates you. And you cannot receive what is meant for you while your heart is closed. So take the time to process, grieve what you lost, grieve who you used to be, cry, journal, reflect, do the inner work. Not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. You must understand, healing is not a break from the journey, it is the journey. When you choose to heal, you begin returning to yourself. You stop running. You stop chasing shadows. You remember who you were before the world tried to make you forget. And from this space, this clarity, this peace, you begin to rebuild, not out of desperation, not to prove a point, but from a place of alignment. A healed person is dangerous in the best way. They are not moved by chaos. They are not controlled by fear. They are grounded, intentional, unshakable. So, don't be afraid to slow down. Don't rush the process. Don't force yourself to move on before you've truly let go. You don't heal by pretending. You heal by being honest. And healing doesn't mean the pain disappears overnight. Sometimes, healing is just waking up and choosing not to repeat the same pattern. Sometimes, healing is saying no. Sometimes it's walking away from what you once begged for. That's what it means to become strong, not just physically, but emotionally. Spiritually, because when you are healed, your decisions become cleaner, your energy becomes purer. You no longer move from a place of lack, you move from a place of power, and that's when you become unstoppable. Not because life becomes easy, but because you have become resilient. So remember this, before you build the business, heal. Before you chase the next relationship, heal. Before you carry the weight of others, heal. Because the world doesn't need more broken people pretending to be whole. It needs people who have done the inner work, people who have sat in the fire and emerged forged, not burned. Heal first, then build. That is the way of self-mastery. That is how you stop being reactive and start being intentional. That is how you shock everyone, not with what you have, but with who you've become. There comes a moment in every person's life when they must decide, am I doing this to be seen, or am I doing this to become? Because for a long time, many of us are driven by a need to prove something, to others, to the world, even to ourselves. We want to prove we're enough, that we're strong, that we've made it, that we matter, and on the surface, it feels like motivation. It pushes you to wake up earlier, to train harder, to keep chasing that next level. But if you look closely, really look, you'll see that it's a prison. Because as long as you are living to prove something, you are still living in reaction to other people's opinions. And that is not freedom. That is not mastery. That is a leash. You don't realize it, but every time you do something just to be liked, to be approved of, to be recognized, you are handing your power away. You're saying, tell me I'm worthy, tell me I'm doing okay, tell me I'm not failing, But who gave them the authority to decide your worth? The truth is, most people don't even know who they are themselves. So why are you working so hard to impress the lost? Here is the shift that changes everything. Let go of the need to prove and devote yourself to becoming. Proving is loud, becoming is silent. Proving needs an audience, becoming requires solitude. Proving says, look at me. Becoming says, I see myself. And when you start walking this new path, when you focus on becoming instead of impressing, you'll notice something strange. People begin to fall away. Friends who only knew you as the entertainer or the people pleaser don't know how to handle your silence. They'll say you've changed, and you know what? They're right. You're no longer performing for applause. You're no longer bending your truth to fit their comfort. You are becoming someone who doesn't need validation to feel worthy. That is uncomfortable for them, but it is necessary for you, because the more you become, the less you need to explain. Your presence becomes your statement. Your actions speak on your behalf. You begin moving with a kind of quiet confidence. Not arrogance, clarity. You know who you are. You know where you're going. And you're no longer interested in proving it to people who are not even walking your path. But this shift is not easy, because for so long we've been taught that our value is measured by how many people approve of us, by how many of followers we have, how many likes, how many compliments. But those numbers, they can't hold you in the dark. They can't guide you when you're lost. They can't build your discipline or give your life meaning. Only you can do that. And that's what becoming is about. It's about showing up every single day, whether anyone notices or not. It's about being faithful to your growth even when no one claps for you. It's about becoming the kind of person who doesn't need to be seen to know he is real. This is where your true power lies. When you stop chasing recognition, your energy returns to you. You're no longer scattered. You're no longer dependent on outcomes. You become centered, grounded, free. Now understand this. Becoming is not a goal. It's not a destination you reach one day. It's a way of being. It's the way you wake up and speak to yourself. It's the way you train when no one is watching. It's the way you handle rejection without collapsing. It's the way you carry your silence with pride, not shame, because silence doesn't mean you have nothing to say. It means you've stopped wasting your breath trying to convince others of your worth. You no longer argue with people who misunderstand you. You no longer perform for people who ignore your effort. You simply become so focused, so whole, so aligned with your path that you outgrow everything that once made you doubt yourself. That is when the shift happens. You're no longer in the arena to prove anything. You are simply becoming who you were always meant to be. No noise, no need for recognition, just quiet evolution. And when you finally show up, fully rooted, fully clear, fully powerful, the world will notice. Not because you asked them to, but because your growth became too undeniable to ignore. So stop proving. Start becoming, and let your transformation speak for itself. We live in a world obsessed with results. What did you achieve? How much did you earn? Did you win? Did you succeed? But there is a deeper wisdom that most overlook. The outcome is never guaranteed, but the effort, that is always within your control. When you live attached to outcomes, you suffer. Because life doesn't always respond the way you want. You give your all in a relationship, and it ends. You show up every day to your craft, and nobody claps. You take the risk, and you still fall. So what do? Most people collapse. They think, what's the point? because their motivation was never rooted in effort. It was rooted in reward, but effort is sacred. Effort is the mirror of your character. It reveals who you are, especially when there is no prize at the end. Let me explain something very clearly. When you can detach from the results and stay married to the process, that is where your power begins. Because most people show up only when it's easy, only when they feel like it, only when there's a promise of something in return. But the ones who rise, the ones who evolve, they show up even when it's dark, even when it's slow, even when there is nothing but silence. They have learned the rarest discipline of all, to love the process more than the praise. And this doesn't mean you don't care about results. It means you don't need them to keep going. Your identity is no longer tied to winning. Your identity is tied to the effort itself. Because at the end of the day, you cannot control how the world reacts. You cannot control if people support you, if they believe in you, or if they reward you. But you can control how you show up. And when you realize this, you stop wasting energy on things you cannot control. You stop asking, "What will I get?" And instead you start asking, "Who am I becoming through this discipline?" You learn to trust the invisible, to show up in silence, to train without applause, to give your all without needing to be seen. That is the path of inner mastery. Look at the monks, look at the warriors. They do not train for approval. They train because training itself is their path to self-respect. In the same way, your effort is a reflection of your self-worth, not because it guarantees success, but because it says, "I refuse to be the kind of person who gives up on myself." Now ask yourself, when was the last time you poured everything into something with no expectation, no return? No praise, just effort, for the sake of your integrity. That is rare, and that is what separates the grounded from the lost. Detach from outcomes because they are never fully in your hands. You could do everything right, and life still says no. You could be loyal and still get betrayed. You could prepare for a year and still face rejection. So what? You do it anyway, because your standard is not determined by results. Your standard is determined by your commitment to yourself. And something powerful happens when you live this way. You become unshakable. You're no longer riding the highs and crashing with the lows. You're stable, rooted, focused, because effort is consistent. It doesn't lie. It doesn't fluctuate with opinion. It is your anchor. This is why the greatest growth always comes in the silent seasons, when no one is watching, when nothing is guaranteed, when the only thing keeping you going is your promise to yourself. Detach from the outcome. Let go of how things should look, and instead attach yourself to your principles, to your habits, to your dedication. You want to shock the world. Don't just show up when it's sunny. Show up in the storm. Don't just move when there's motivation. Move when there's discipline. Don't just act when people cheer. Act when no one knows your name because of that kind of effort. It doesn't just create results. It creates transformation. So yes, set goals, have visions, but don't let the outcome define your value. Let your effort define it. Let the work speak. Let the discipline build you, because in the end, the result fades. But the person you became through the process, that stays with you forever. There is great power in silence, not the silence that comes from fear or hiding, but the kind of silence that grows from clarity, the kind of silence that says, "I know who I am, I don't need to shout it." We live in a world that teaches you to broadcast everything. Tell them what you're building, show them what you're doing. Post your progress, announce your goals. But ask yourself, who are you doing it for? Is it truly for you, or is it to be seen? Because the more you speak of what you will do, the more energy you leak. You give away your focus in exchange for temporary validation. You trade your depth for noise, and that noise becomes a distraction from your transformation. You see, a seed does not announce itself as it grows. It breaks through the darkness, roots deep into the earth, stretches toward the sun in absolute silence. And then one day it becomes a tree, and no one can deny it. This is the power of silence. When you move quietly, your energy stays concentrated. You're not wasting time defending your dream. You're not explaining yourself to those who cannot understand your path. You're not trying to prove anything. You're simply becoming. People think power is loud, but real power is still. It doesn't shout, it doesn't seek approval, it simply exists unshaken by the noise of the world. Most people expose their vision too early. And when it doesn't happen the way they planned, they lose motivation. Because they weren't chasing the purpose, they were chasing the applause. That's why you must learn to fall in love with the silence, with the grind no one sees, with the mornings you wake up alone, fighting battles only you can understand. Because that's where transformation is born. The ones who rise, they are the ones who kept moving when no one was watching. They are the ones who didn't need to say, "Watch me succeed," because they knew one day the world would see what their silence was building. And when that moment comes, you don't need to speak. Your results will say everything. So you don't need to post about every workout. You don't need to announce every plan. You don't need to explain your choices to anyone. Just move. Silently, with purpose, with discipline. That is what makes you untouchable. Because the moment you stop needing to be seen, you become free. Free from opinions, free from comparison, free from the weight of expectation. Your focus sharpens. Your energy becomes sacred. Your actions grow roots. And suddenly you are no longer performing for the crowd. You are evolving for yourself. Now understand, silence does not mean passivity. It means maturity. It means you've realized that real growth doesn't happen on stage. It happens in solitude. When you're sitting in your room, asking yourself hard questions. When you're facing your habits, your fears, your distractions, and choosing discipline instead. That is where greatness begins, so let others talk. Let them judge, let them doubt you. You don't owe the world explanations. You owe yourself results, and when those results come, they will be undeniable, not because you announce them, but because you live them. This is the art of quiet mastery, and it's not for everyone, because most people need attention to feel alive. But the few who don't, they become dangerous. Dangerous in the way a blade is sharp, silent, focused. Intentional because they don't react, they create. They don't beg, they build. They don't chase, they attract. So if you're on this path, understand one thing. Your silence is not emptiness. It is the womb of transformation. Keep moving, keep building, keep becoming, and let your silence echo louder than any words ever could. Move in silence. Let success make the noise. That is the way of the disciplined. That is the way of the self-mastered. And that is the way of power. You don't have to announce your comeback. You don't need to convince anyone you're changing. Let them underestimate you. Let them forget you. Let them doubt you. But while they're watching stories, you'll be writing your own. Silently, patiently, deliberately, step by step, becoming unstoppable. Because this journey isn't about proving them wrong. It's about proving to yourself that you were never broken, just buried, and now, piece by piece, you rise. So, if this message spoke to something deep inside of you, if you felt seen, heard, or understood in any way, then take a breath and don't let it stop here. Comment below what part hit your soul the most. Like the video if you're done playing small. Share this with someone who needs to remember their power. And if you're ready for more of this energy, this truth, subscribe right now, because this isn't just a video. It's a movement, and you were meant to rise, quietly, completely, unapologetically. Let's walk this path together, until the silence becomes too loud to ignore.